Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for your attendance today at Verse Across Canada. My name is Teresa Young, and I will be co-hosting tonight's reading with my very talented new friend, Miriam Legault-Beauregard. Miriam is, above everything else, a loving mother and translator. At night, when her two children are asleep, she pursues her literary dreams. Her translations can be found in K1N, Reunion, and Ellipse. 2 of her original poems have been published in Post, and 2 more will appear in Ellipse very soon. While French is her first language, she also enjoys writing in English. So I'm very pleased that we will be co-hosting this event together. So for those of you who don't know, VERSeFest is Ottawa's annual international festival of poetry. It's built on a mandate of fostering creative crossroads and community. We feature poets in English and French of all traditions, styles, and forms. And since 2011, we have showcased the best local Canadian and international poets performing in both spoken and written word scenes. And we actually do have a spoken word event this evening at 9 Eastern Time. As one of Canada's largest and most successful poetry festivals, our stages have featured readings by Griffin, Governor General, and Pulitzer Prize winners. So tonight, I'm very excited to be celebrating the work of 4 outstanding poets. They are Vanessa Bell, Catherine Hunter, Lillian, Necakov, and Medrie Purdham. And Miriam will be introducing Vanessa.
Thank you, Teresa. Bonsoir, je vais présenter Vanessa en français. C'est la 2e année que je collabore avec VERSeFest à titre de traductrice, mais c'est la première fois qu'on me demande de présenter des poètes. C'est évidemment un grand honneur, surtout pour des invités comme celle que nous entendrons aujourd'hui. Au mois d'août dernier, je me suis procuré l'anthologie de la poésie actuelle des femmes au Québec 2000-2020, co-dirigée par Catherine Cormier-Larose et Vanessa Bell. C'est un ouvrage magnifique, avec une sélection vraiment intéressante de poètes et de poèmes. Je suis donc particulièrement emballée de présenter Vanessa Bell aujourd'hui. Vanessa a fait paraître son premier recueil, intitulé Des rivières à la peuplade en 2019, mais elle s'investit dans le milieu culturel québécois depuis des années. Elle porte d'ailleurs plusieurs chapeaux, dont ceux de chroniqueuse et de critique littéraire, de co-directrice de l'organisme Contour, et j'en passe. Elle est sans doute très disciplinée, en plus d'être passionnée, puisqu'elle réussit à lire un recueil de poésie par jour. Je trouve ça tellement inspirant, là. Lire des centaines de recueils par année, compiler une anthologie, co-diriger un organisme comme Contour qui, je cite, contribue à la production et à la diffusion d'initiatives artistiques dans une approche intersectionnelle, intergénérationnelle et représentative des multiples identités langagières qui façonnent la poésie actuelle. Voilà autant de façons dont Vanessa Bell manifeste son dévouement envers les membres de la communauté poétique. Mais n'oublions pas qu'elle écrit elle-même et avec beaucoup de talent. J'ai lu cette semaine, et je dois dire très avidement, son recueil de rivières qui m'a fait dire « Wow ». J'ai trouvé vraiment audacieuse sa façon d'aborder la féminité et ses mots vraiment justes. J'espère donc que nous aurons la chance de pouvoir lire d'autres de ses œuvres prochainement. Et en attendant, j'ai bien hâte de voir ce qu'elle nous a préparé ce soir. Voici donc Vanessa Bell.
Bonsoir. Mon Dieu, Myriam, merci beaucoup pour cette présentation plus grande que nature. Merci aussi à vous d'être là. Je suis désolée, je vais lire en français ce soir. En fait, j'en suis pas désolée, mais j'espère que le flow de ma voix sera assez intéressant pour les personnes qui sont moins habituées avec le français. Donc, ce soir, je vous lis 2 textes, un extrait de Deux rivières, effectivement, qui est paru en 2019 à la Peuplade, et un extrait d'une suite qui est parue peut-être si vous ne la connaissez pas, dans une très, très belle revue qui s'appelle Estuaire, qui est une revue de poésie contemporaine québécoise. Donc, sans plus attendre, puisque nous sommes plusieurs et que j'ai hâte d'entendre les autres panélistes, voilà. À mes filles avortées, celles aux jambes graciles, vous charrierez dans vos poches des bombes écarlates, déposerez au pied des montagnes la couleur de vos songes. Veillez, veillez encore. Il existe des âges pour chacun de vos ongles arrachés. À mes filles, j'aliène ma colère, mon féministe inapte, mon legs écossais dissonant les terres agricoles et mes épaules larges. À mes filles, je laisse le côté radieux de la vie, des cheveux longs, des cordes à danser, ma rage et tous les feux allumés. À mes filles, je lègue peau de chagrin, mon corps faillible. J'ai porté ce qui pouvait. À mes filles, j'offre des couronnes d'obus, des coups de feu dans le dos, je vous noierai dans vos devenirs, et plus d'horizons que ceux convenus pour la souvenance, faites-vous charbon, collés aux mains et aux torses, soyez royautés, enjoués, herbiers de faïence, faites-vous morte lasse en série. Redites, votre droit de vous faire bercer. Mais une chose, soyez mauvaise. Rouez les gardiennes des pouponnières, incendiez les chevaux et les lacs, ne laissez personne en repos. Divisez pour mieux régner, sucez vos pouces, et les hommes, faites ce que je n'ai pas pu. À mes filles, je cède mes bouches pleines de sang, mes amours terrifiés, une collection de fiançailles d'or véritable. Vous aurez de quoi acheter perles et rubans, livres et cigares. Chantez. J'observe votre ronde. Ne vous en remettez à personne, grossières et sourdes. Prêtez foi à ce sexe détrempé où vous perdrez vos mains. Et si, réduite au silence, à dire et redire des évidences, rappelez votre colère, élevez vos voix par-delà vos têtes, et il y aura entendeur au calcul des forces. Que puis-je encore? Vous offrir un chant où vous immolez, un battement chaud, une vie. De vos robes, je trancherai les cheveux, de vos jambes, les chevilles. Debout, je porterai mes filles au fond des lacs. Vous nagerez la nuit venue à flanc de bateaux marchands. Il fera froid. Pas assez pour le dire. Une distance supplémentaire entre vous et vous seul. N'ignorez pas vos colères, elles sont vos romances. Sans compromis, aimez. Donc, c'était le premier extrait. J'y vais. Est-ce que tu voulais parler, Myriam, ou t'es juste apparue dans la... Ah, il y a des... Oh, merci. Donc, j'y vais pour la deuxième, qui est une suite, en fait, qui est une commande de la revue Estuaire. Et juste pour la très brève, merci tout le monde, c'est gentil. Pour la toute petite mise en contexte, on était au tout début de la pandémie, donc dans ce moment un peu plus catastrophé, avec moins d'accoutumance que maintenant. Et la revue Estuaire m'a commandé un texte sur le thème de la joie. Et c'était très, très... contradictoire avec ce que je vivais à ce moment-là. Donc, j'ai pris ma voiture et je suis retournée jusqu'à la maison de mon arrière-grand-mère où je passais tous mes étés et les vacances de Noël aussi quand j'étais petite. Et ce texte-là est né. Donc, j'y vais. Ça s'appelle Feume, qui est le nom d'un vent. Sophie Letourneau, écrit dans le très, très beau livre « Chasse à l'homme » paru à la Peuplade. Elle écrit « La joie prend la forme du retour, la joie nous est connue, elle est ce qu'on connaît qui réapparaît. » Je viens de parking show, des cours à scrap où s'entassent des voitures de toutes les époques, mauve, jaune, bleu, font advenir réalité. Je viens de la rivière, les mollets plantés, piquants, le froid rend le corps supportable. Mon courage, le seul que j'ai, celui de fuir, je ne peux plus, je l'ai déjà écrit, mais on s'obstine à me montrer, me charger, me parer, me mettre au-devant, moi qui le fais pourtant si naturellement. Avance, tu es bonne, mieux vaut-toi que nous. Je viens d'une rivière colérique qui déborde toute saison. Nul ne marchera sur mes terres. Je me soustrais, me reprends, me couronne. Nul ne viendra installer ses jardins sur ce qui, à moi, appartient. Liste des choses qui m'appartiennent. Cailloux, dégel, pataugeur, ce qui est bleu, nageur, baie, loutre, monstres marins, astres, musique, neige, forêt, champs, poussière, roche, carcasse, fusil, poumon, or, chanson. Je viens de pièce sur pièce, de maisons sales et rancies, de caveaux à patates, du froid, de ce qui toujours nous transit. Je viens d'un endroit où j'aurais voulu t'amener, te montrer, te dire en silence. Regarde, c'est d'ici que je viens. C'est tout ce que je peux. C'est d'ici que je viens. Le comprends-tu? Maintenant, ce que tu me demandes est trop grand. Liste des choses qui m'appartiennent. Couteau, couverte, la couleur mauve, prière, adoration, sang, blessure, baiser, rivière, traversier, ciel, maison, ostentation, conifère, lumière, peau, temps, ce qui scintille, le sel, garage, chute, ruisseau, brunante, sommeil, marée, papa, rosa, morsure. Je ne suis pas chez moi, ici. Peut-être est-ce ce que je cherche, rompre ailleurs que dans mes habitudes, ailleurs que dans ce qui est attendu, car l'attente est insoutenable. Oui, l'attente dit que je devrais vivre, céder 26 côtes, une solitude, non pas celle à laquelle je consens tous les jours, mais bien celle dans laquelle j'avais placé un espoir que l'on appelle famille. Liste des choses qui m'appartiennent. Orage, colère, honte, épreuves, humiliations, gêne, peur, fessée, saignée, corde, moulin, cime, insubordination, mépris, cierge, eau de Pâques. Liste des promesses non tenues. Respecter mes engagements d'amour. Je n'ai rien du courage, je n'ai pas la force des recommencements, ne suis pas de celle-là, je le sais cette fois, et la dernière, il me semble qu'à moi-même, je n'appartiens pas, que seule furie, je suis chez moi, que seule colère, j'habite mon corps, que seule, jamais à deux, à trois, pas même dans mon corps de mère, jamais, ensemble, seul, je mords, égoïste et secret, mens pour grandir, pratique des rituels méchants qui de la joie étonnent. J'exerce mes hanches, mes sculptes rondes, ma taille petite, mes seins d'avenir. J'efface les certitudes de ce qui, lentement, se lève. Enfantelette, je tuais par simple plaisir, car de plaisir, je n'avais que celui de la mort. Regardais le collet, la monture sombre du cou, la tête saillante, on aurait dit ébouillantée, les ailes criantes victoire, repu et la chute des corps. Ça piquait d'en haut, imposait sa violence, entamait par les yeux ce qui achevait déjà. J'étais heureuse, enfin, quelque part heureuse, oui, de les voir bomber, exhumer leurs racines, ongles noirs, petits lambeaux rejoindre mes habits. J'aurais voulu te montrer la maison. J'aurais voulu, oui, mais j'aurais dû te montrer au salon une femme se frottant les mains dans l'évier. Il aurait fallu que de tes bras, tu la tires de l'anonymat qui me froisse. Que de ta voix naissent les lieux nouveaux de ce qui, après moi, encore vivra. Ça aurait été beaucoup. Pour peu. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Vanessa. C'était magnifique, vraiment. Et over to you, Teresa, for the rest of the evening.
Thank you. Wow, thank you so much, Vanessa. You are such a mesmerizing speaker, especially in the virtual world. I think I'm just repeating a lot of the comments everyone else is making, but that was incredible. So thank you so much again for that. I'd like to introduce our next reader, Catherine Hunter. Catherine Hunter is a Winnipeg writer. Her most recent book is the poetry collection, St. Boniface Elegies. And for anyone who hasn't read it yet, please read it. It is amazing. This book was shortlisted for the Governor General's Award for Poetry and a High Plains Book Award, as well as a winner of the Manitoba's Lansdowne Prize for Poetry. Her short story, Calling You, through Prairie Fire in 2020, won the Golden Fiction at the National Book Awards. Just another big celebration of St. Boniface Elegies. I just want to say that it is such a beautiful book that really deftly encapsulates within its pages the multi-dimensional ways in which we explore family and grief and loss. So it's an absolute honor tonight to have Catherine read for us. Thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness, Teresa, thank you so much. It's hard to believe that anybody anybody outside of the neighborhood has ever seen the book. So that's wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I'm here in Winnipeg. This is Treaty 1 territory, as many of you know. It's the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji Cree, the Dakota, and the Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis people. And I'm in the neighborhood called St. Boniface, which is particularly and especially the homeland of the Métis people. And used to be a town, actually. It was a French town in Manitoba all by itself, but Winnipeg swallowed it up. So now we call it a neighborhood. And so the book is, I mentioned that mostly because the book is called St. Boniface Elegies, and there it is with a beautiful painting on the front by Winnipeg painter Cliff Eland, who unfortunately passed away shortly after the book was published, but he did get to see it. So it's called St. Boniface Elegies after the neighborhood, but also after St. Boniface Hospital, which is in the neighborhood. And the poems I'm going to read, the first few poems I'm going to read tonight, mention the hospital quite a lot, and some of them take place in the hospital. And my husband was very ill from 2016 till 2018 when he passed away. And I was writing poems all the time. And I asked him at one point, I said, you know, I'm writing about all this, right? And he said, no doubt. So I don't feel too badly writing about him. So these first few poems I'm going to read kind of go in and out of the hospital. This first one is called Romance. I miss you. Sparrows gather at the feeder, spill seeds and gossip, plant a field of sunflowers in the middle of the lawn. And suddenly, your bicycle, still locked to the fence post where you left it, crashes to the ground, and all the birds take flight. The bike lies sideways, one wheel spinning. Meanwhile, you're 5 miles away, shuffling through hospital corridors, attached by rubber tubes to an IV pole, an astronaut too loosely tethered to the ship. When I said you should go wireless, you laughed. You stood at the window 6 floors above the street and waved goodbye. Radiation, says the doctor, is just sunlight. She tells us how precisely they will aim the beam into your brain. Long ago, my 4th grade teacher said the sun is 93 million miles away, and we can never escape the atmosphere of Earth because of gravity. Now they're sending cameras out on rocket ships. Today, the Curiosity beamed home an image of the dark sand dunes of Mars, sunlit as our backyard garden. Beauty, said Keats, is all we need to know. But we weren't listening. Here on Earth, the black cat circles the honeysuckle, tangling her leash 8 times around the branches. And though it's daylight, I can see the 3/4 moon through the cottonwood branches. A skim milk moon, a pale suburban joke. And I can't believe we ended up living out here among the landscaped lawns and stuccoed bungalows where we said we'd never even visit, where the mallards criticize the neighbor's hot tub, and the squirrel on the high wire launches a complaint, his debut on Facebook ruined when he was misidentified as a chipmunk. Do you ever wonder how we get out here, do you ever wonder how we end up where we are? On Earth or Mars, or even farther, light years from the 93 million miles that, way back when, seemed deeper than a brain could go. That chipmunk tripped me up there. Okay. This poem is called Liberty. So windy this spring, the apple blossoms only lasted 2 days, and I forgot to take a photograph for you. Instead, I bring a thermos of soup, the sports news, remind the nurses to brush your teeth. Alone in the house all night, I'm free, not only singing the Daniel Boone theme song to the cat while washing dishes, but providing cultural analysis of the lyrics as well. I can work 10, 12 hours at a time without your interruptions, your requests for mustard and crossword puzzle answers, your advice to be reasonable about the wine. Sweet liberty. But last night, when the great gray owl swooped across the yard, rush of its muscular wings brushing my hair, there was no one to witness it and no one to tell. And tonight, I'm the only one watching this TV concert of songs by Leonard Cohen. All I remember about being 13 is listening to Goodbye Marianne on the scratchy, portable record player my parents gave me. And now on TV, here is Cohen's son, all grown up, singing that same song, clear and rich through our digital receiver and the kind of speakers my parents could never afford. When we were young and philosophical, we used to say, time is an illusion, never dreaming that was true. Alone in the house these nights, all grown up, I do whatever I want. Stay awake till 6 a.m., clean closets, sort the bookshelves alphabetically, and then by genre. Work the entire crossword by myself, then nap in the sunny spot you always reserved for the cat. Come back. This poem is called Justice. It's 33 degrees above this time, and the crisis counselors are out on strike. Each morning I wake with my head glued to the pillow by heat, or maybe the simple G-force of this carbon-based life. Flat on my back, I watch a sort of world through the window, or what used to be the world. The red squirrel leaps from roof to tree. As always, here comes that mid-air moment of terror between eaves trough and the thin end of the branch. The morning radio is asking random citizens their views on justice. And I remember when I used to correct my students on their use of the word random. That was in another life, when words had meanings that were literally fixed as stars. The squirrel, a pirate, bravely boards the bird feeder. Chickadees scatter, finches squinch, robins walk the plank. The squirrel clings to a branch by some invisible means, lowers her body, and hanging upside down, eats fulsomely from the bird feeder. Fulsomely, as those who don't know what fulsome means might say. And who could blame her? Last night in emergency, I heard the guy in the next bed talking to his sister, confessing to a robbery and begging her to take the stash. I was waiting there for hours as his visitors went in and out behind the curtain. I heard him tell 3 different stories, one to his mother, one to the cops, and one to the doctor who stitched his stab wounds shut. I'm the only one who knew that he was lying every time. Later, as the cops drank coffee in the corridor, I saw his sister walk right past them with her pockets full of stolen drugs. She thanked them politely for saving her brother's life, and then she got into a cab. I felt it was only right, maybe a kind of justice, that I got to see the end of that story, because I couldn't see the end of ours, and maybe didn't want to. Hard to tell if that squirrel is afraid or confident, suspended there. But that's where stories end sometimes, mid-air. Now, this poem is called Collision. And I was very happy that VERSeFest is doing these translations. That was very exciting for me. And so Eric Charlebois translated this poem into French, and I'm not going to torture you by reading it in French, but I'll read it in English, but it is on the website of VERSeFest in French. En français, I should say. Collision. Rain falls on the plum tree and the catnip patch. Rain falls on the grave site of the hawk who crashed into our window in July. Rain fills rain barrel, wheelbarrow, bird bath. But we are dry inside, watching people on TV, watching television. It's the presidential debates, the autumn of 2016. Nobody is really sure how close to death we are. But Voyager has long since crossed the border of the solar system. Each day it's sailing farther into interstellar space. Rain falls on the garden gnome the neighbors gave me for my 50th birthday. That night, my brother and I clinked glasses saying, how in hell did we ever get this far? How did we get in so deep? Stayed up till dawn, counting the many friends we had outlived. The hawk, looking into our window, must have seen the ferns suspended from our ceiling. Must have seen the reflection of the Scotch pine branches in the yard, and above them, the reflection of the blue, wide open sky. So those are all from one section, and I want to end with a little poem called Poetry Wars, which is quite a different type of poem. And it comes probably from spending too much time on Twitter, probably in like around 2016, when everyone was arguing about the poetry and bashing the lyric poets mercilessly. So I thought that, because VERSeFest does encompass all these different types of poetry, and it's so diverse in its genres and approaches, that I thought this might be a fun poem to read. And I just wish that I had my friend Scott here, because playing the bongo drums to accompany this poem, because it's really great when he does that. But anyway, Poetry Wars. Uptown versus downtown, borrowers versus thieves, metaphysical poets versus poets who don't believe, 20th century poets versus those from the 21st, poets who are drinking versus those with a terrible thirst, poets funded by oil versus poets funded by wheat, fish versus lumber, limestone versus peat, slam versus dub versus found versus tone, bird versus moon, skin versus bone, left-handed poets versus the right, day versus day, night versus night, poets who type versus those who erase, capitals versus the lowercase, X versus Y, brain versus heart, academia versus art, deep as the ocean, old as the stars, mysterious, furious, poetry wars. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine, especially with ending from that poem. With that poem, I've actually read it, and I've seen a couple of reviews that talk about how clever and comedic it is, and I've never heard you read it before, so I can imagine it's a real treat to be able to hear you read that poem. So thank you. The next poet we have is Lillian Necakov. Lillian is the author of 6 books of poetry, numerous chapbooks, broadsides, and leaflets. Her new book, Elvirus, was published in April 2021 by Anvil Press. In 2016, her chapbook, The Lake Contains an Emergency Room, was shortlisted for the BP Nicol Chapbook Award. During the 1980s, Lillian ran a micropress called the Surrealist Poets Gardening Association and sold her books on Toronto's Yonge Street. She ran the Bone Shaker reading series from 2010 to 2020. Lillian lives in Toronto and just might be working on a new book. I actually have a story about Lillian, which I've never told anybody, but it's a good one. One time I worked in this office where there were at least, I think, 200 people, and somebody had left a copy of The Bone Broker on my desk. and it just had my name, Teresa, on it. And I was so excited. I didn't know anything about the book, and I didn't know who had actually sent it to me. And it's not really appropriate that I did this, but I sent a mass email to 200 people and I just said, who gave me this book? I need to know immediately. And it became this thread at work. And I think I upset many people because the email chain just kept continuing. And of course, the only person who would have known to send me a book like that was the wonderful Jim Smith. And if I had just thought about it, I would have known. But Jim just thinks Lillian is absolutely the bee's knees. And, you know, reading that book and that introduction to your work, I can't agree with him anymore. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be introducing you today, and just thank you also for being here. So please, Lillian, share with us your work.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so amazing, Teresa. What a great story. And of course, yes, Jim would have done that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I really want to tell you how happy and pleased I am to be reading with all these other wonderful authors. So I'll be reading mostly from my book, Il Virus, that, as Teresa said, came out from Anvil Press this year. But I'd like to start with just another piece before I get into that. This one is called The World is Beautiful. David Hockney says the world is beautiful. I believe him because I'm an optimist, knowing the average weights of the organs of the human body, knowing there's a kind of reincarnation even after you tell them you sometimes wished you were a boy, knowing the brain at 49.5 ounces, avoir 1,389.13 grams and a bit more, is generous enough to endure both imagination and crown through the acrobatics of feasts and funerals. David Hockney's heart equals 11 ounces. His eyes are the word we use for the color of water. He widens the Grand Canyon as easily as letting out a seam, says the world is beautiful, and I believe him. Knowing that lungs, right 24 ounces, left 21 ounces, are the colanders of time, cradling vestiges of scree from the mass of one breath, 0.5-5 grams times a lifetime. Knowing that there are lakes drowning in the whimsical ether of a tourniquet-wielding, junkie planet, invisible and blue. David Hockney believes me when I say the world is beautiful, knowing that every swimming pool is a small bit of heaven where you and Fred Astaire are always cheek to cheek, knowing that a body in motion stays in motion, knowing that the executioner never takes his finger off the trigger, not even when the kiss is slower than death, knowing that Popeye clung to olive oil behind the spinach cannery while the sun parched our lips raw, knowing that night is coming like a confession, dressed in raspberry, saw-toothed hot pants. So this book, I wrote this book during the period of, I can't even remember now, 78 days in the spring of 2020, during that first lockdown. And so every day I wrote a poem or more, and I posted every day on Facebook. I posted the poems on Facebook, and it was a real cathartic experience for me, and from what I've heard from some of my friends, for them as well. And so the poems are not titled, they're just numbered. And I'm just gonna start with number 2. The heart is happiest when it hears its echo. That's been on the tip of my tongue for days now. A thing I couldn't quite put my finger on, the pulse of it. I remember now we kept a suitcase by the door. The cows stood ever so still, afraid we might leave them at the foot of the mountain, at the edge of the graveyard. I remember now, steam rising off the fields, one last breath before we began counting life in dog years, before words were heavy as horses. 24. Corazon. At 3 p.m., there will be nerve food to strengthen the heart, morph the grimace, wash away the gunpowder. At 5 p.m., the occupation might end, or we could just sit on the porch reading Lorca. A lot of these pieces were informed by what was happening around me, news headlines, the news, of course, the pandemic itself. So a lot of that kind of found its way into this book. 26. They're spilling milk by the truckload, and we're talking about a pink moon rising. There's a man in Montgomery dying to be an angel, and we're talking about a pink moon rising. There's me and the thunder in the sky, a broken trinity, and we're talking about a pink moon rising. There's a monk eating pretzels over a letterboard, and we're talking about a pink moon rising. There's a house of cards filled with an injured syntax, and we're talking about a pink moon rising. There's a pile of leaves at the end of my lane in the shape of a freak show, and we're talking about a pink moon rising. There's a recklessness growing inside me. 55. Beneath the 49th parallel, the cruelty project blows the house down, scrapes the skin off the living, leaves language voiceless. Meanwhile, well-mannered Canada goslings in mucklucks are rewarded with peace prizes under the flicker of northern lights. So we were doing a lot of, I'm sure as many people were, baking, cooking, sewing, trying to do all kinds of crafts and things just to keep our minds off what was going on outside of the doors of our homes. So this was kind of a nod to that. Number 56. If I sewed my hands finger to finger, could there still be space enough for shadows? Would you watch as the needle loitered before moving through bone and tendon? And if later I removed the stitches to run each finger through your hair, would it feel different? Number 86. We start at the end, Z, Y, X, W. We feel like redactionists, alchemists, seedsmen, moonlighters, necromancers, and revisionists. Greasy typesetting ink bleeders, junk haulers, volcano eaters, sad-eyed word benders, moving through the jeopardous molecules of heavenless days with a hypothesis, a hidden agenda, a bloody freakishness, a flip side trajectory, a wild west around our necks. We tear out the letters between Dick and Jane, the beat of a generation, as if a resurrection, a sacrament, a trance, a lament, a cardinal, a blues riff, a yoke, a child. We thwack, thump, thud, scrub, lather, and starch each letter against the walnut wood washboard in a coughing house until it glistens like a golden leaf. We hang each majuscule to swing on the clothesline in the sunlight like a hostage. At day's end, we remove the clothespins like picking off soldiers. We start with an A and an N and a D. We fashion a hieroglyph to be hung in the window to remind us there will be a tomorrow and again a tomorrow and a name and a name and a flutter. Oh yeah, so during this time, I don't know, I was just going through YouTube and watching some weird little clips, and I found this clip of Charles Bukowski, I don't know, just going into a liquor store, and that sparked this poem. So this is called, this is number 101. Charles Bukowski walks into an off license, tells the woman with the unruly glasses he's a poet, a modern poet, asks does she live on Normandy, and is her hangover as lucid as his? She looks at him like a trapped bird. All she wants is her liquor, her very own hangover, and to be left alone. A modern poet, you say? Yes, Bukowski. You can buy my books. Bukowski, buy my books. So during that period, there were a lot of walks with my dog, who I also thanked in the acknowledgements of this book. So this was just kind of observations on one of those walks. 107. On today's walk, 7 bicycles, one to the beat of Cannonball Adderley, a dizzy kind of business, 4 robins setting a bird table on the gardener's spade, 1 magnolia, opus half done, 38 tulips on the school's lawn, turban-clad Persian soldiers, maroon swooning, 11 a.m., 7,000 to the power of 2 times 8,000 to the power of 3 blades of grass, a gargantuan emerald river of skin, 63 minutes, countless dandelions punctuating the run-on sentence squatting in my skull, and all this held and held under one crisp blue whole note. (110) Newton said that gravitation is universal. Why is it that the dying cannot tell the living what they really want in death? I get a call. A man is dying. I picture the man sitting by the lake. He loves the lake, hopes that someday very soon he will move across the map of this great body of water like a metaphor, like a fish pulled to probability. I picture the disease as a quorum of crab traveling at the speed of light until they reach 0 bone, 0 flesh, just the pull of the water and the probability of metaphor. This is the last piece in the book, and it's number 113. This morning I woke to the sound of birds whispering about the humans. We are sorry your flags are on fire. Your newspapers are inked with the blood of a son and another and another. We hear the cracking of bones all the way down 12th Street when you think no one is looking. We have seen tear gas flower over city after city while you huddled in doorways like broken teeth. We hear the creak of war's door opening while some fly kites and others kiss the feet of Jesus. We feel the earth tearing out her hair, shifting position, filling her lungs with the last breaths of innocent men and women. We hear her weeping into the flames and over the rubber bullets dropping into the boulevard like chestnuts. We know what the black and the blue and the electrifying night bring, and we know what it means to be dying to live. We know the names by heart: Birmingham, Philadelphia, Watts, Flint, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Twin Cities. And sometimes when you are asleep, we recite them back to you in hopes that the hate growing inside your children might spiral out of them like a final breath. And the last piece I'm just going to read is called Seamus Heaney, and it's a new piece, and it's going to be in a small chapbook that Rob McLennan is putting out by his press, Above Ground Press, sometime early in the new year. Seamus Heaney. 1. Remember that time we were just kids and so many of us were still alive, and I took the red eye from west to east, like writing a slow sentence all the way past Corner Brook, Gander, Seldom, until finally falling off Fogo Island into Saturday, standing in a call box outside Dublin Airport with the rain heaving down on me, shoulders bent in defeat, until I heard the bells of St. Thomas Church on Foster's Avenue, while the 6 a.m. garbage collector tidied the street like a librarian gathering books. And remember how the rain stopped and nothing was wrong, and morning spread herself over the antennas and milk shops, and for one fucking second, everything was unbroken and just as it should be. 2. Remember how I climbed the stairs of Blarney Castle to kiss the clock na Blarnan like a stupid tourist, and how there were horses, so many horses, sweet calcite, flattery on the lips and the moon not quite ready to rise, and giggling girls and the ache of country washing over us, and song carrying over Blarney River, and come morning, I would hitchhike all the way to Con's stronghold in County Kerry, to walk the beach, to listen for God's troubles tangled in the thick dulse grass, and remember how the cows threaded themselves seamlessly into the day's end, and there were bitter apples and caleys and whispers on the wind, fiddles and boots and storybirds, and night ferried across the great seas as if nothing more than air. 3. Also that time, talking to a busker on Grafton Street, when someone came running past, hollering that Seamus Heaney was drinking at Mulligan's on Poolbeg Street, and I unbuttoned my coat and started running until I realized it was already too late, and I remembered it would someday be now, and Heaney would be dead, and I would regret not having seen a glimpse of him, broad-grinned, jewel-eyed, jargon-lipped, existing in the twinkling of autumn weather like an ache or a misrecollected word. 4. Remember too a small house above the Keys pub on a Galway night, talking until dawn with flouncy boys about Blake, Evan Boland, and Oscar Wilde, listening to Leonard Cohen cassette tapes, promising to write, even though we all knew how easily we would forget to remember once winter came and went, and how when Sunday broke, I would pay the Doolin Ferry Company £6 to barge me across Galway Bay to Inishmore, where I would sit, legs dangling over the cliffs of Arran, well into midnight, listening to small cottages moan, each whimper filled with a birth and a drowning, each memory a stone begetting stone. And I remembered it was now, and I was sitting in a snowbank listening to Thompson Highway's laughter, filling the air like a gentle mist, like music in the skin of a whale. And I remembered I never did make it to Hindford Street or Cherry Valley or North Road Bridge. And I remembered I never did make it home. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Lillian. That was, wow. I don't even have anything to say. The pandemic poems are eerily relatable. So I'm going to be processing that for a while. And thank you for sharing that most recent poem. It's really fantastic. So our next poet and our last poet tonight is Medrie Purdham, who lives in Regina, Saskatchewan in Treaty 4. I'm also from Saskatchewan, so that's fantastic. And also Medrie teaches at the University of Regina. Her first collection of poetry, Little House Wolf, was published by Vehicle Press in 2021. Her poems have appeared in journals across the country, have been broadcast on CBC Saskatchewan Sound Exchange, and have been featured several times in Tightrope Press's Best Canadian Poetry Series. Medrie won the City of Regina Writing Award in 2015 and was runner-up for Arc Magazine's Poem of the Year competition in 2019. And Medrie, in reading your work, I find that you have such a remarkable talent for transforming the day-to-day into something worth taking a second, third, and fourth glance at for the beauty in it. And it really reminds me of Mary Pratt's art, her watercolors. And I just think you're such a fantastic poet. I think the Miramichi reader aptly sums up your work when they described Little House as a quietly powerful collection of poetry. There are no grand epics here, no rallying cries, just beautiful verse and a keen eye for overlooked details, which become the center of their own stories. So please welcome Medrie.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for that very generous introduction. Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. It's fun pretending to be in Ottawa. I'm so happy to be able to read with these incredible poets and to be among friends tonight. So I'm going to read from Little House Wolf, which was published by Vehicle Press, as Teresa mentioned, and the cover design here is by David Drummond. And yes, it is very much about small things and also miniature things, which are a little bit different. Because I think, when we talk about something being miniature, we're not just talking about it being small, but also talking about it being denaturalized in some way. The first poem I'm going to read is called The Thimbles Bucket List, and it was supposed to be part of a series. I had this idea that I would write a bunch of poems about the tiny tokens from Monopoly, but I only did the thimble. And then I must have remembered how much I dislike Monopoly. So it's turned out to be a standalone poem. The Thimbles Bucket List. To be a bucket, like a house cat to a saber tooth, like a leaf to a canopy, to grade up, to contain, yes, an abundance, to cap the digit of a falconer's glove, to anchor flight's first maneuver, to be needled by nature, to be ornamented, to be indistinguishable from a crown in bird's eye view, a trick of scale, to be stolen by a magpie, to line a nest and to be overgrown there, sighing, so much for the monarchy, to be the subject of a child's brass rubbing, metallic pastel on black, to play a shell game with two others and a pearl, to be the mortar to a pinch of cure, to line the keyhole of a piano, to resonate, to name a note as the threshold of all trembling, say the middle B flat, to know the child prodigy who played scales with one hand while catching flies with the other, stuffing their bodies into the keyhole, to be exactly that carnivorous, to be carnivorous to music, to be lost while on a picnic, to stand empty in a crosswind whiffling, to decorate a sundial, pepper the light in a garden, to learn increments of time finally that are not seconds, to visit the Bayou Tapestry, reading the linen from the finished side, to see the horse, the hawk, the man, the war, the conference, the king, the fording of rivers with shields held high over heads, to defend the storyteller, to let her put her hand in the mouth of truth and not mind the scorpion, to jam the torturer's tongue like a stone in the beak, to fence, knowing intimately the poignant strategies of the foil. No, instead, to work, to settle into detail, to work a Dorset wheel button spoked with 100 stitches, to keep revisiting the center, to be touched again, 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 again. The next poem I'll read, I've never read before, which is why I chose it for tonight. And I think the reason I've never read it before is it feels really different to me because in Little House Wolf, all the poems are lyric, but this one is a dramatic monologue and it's in the persona of a pigeon fancier. And I have only an average person's appreciation for pigeons. So this is, you have to picture this as being read in character and in the presence of another character. It's called The Last Meeting of the Chadwick Moors Pigeon Fanciers Association. I'm not talking about your scrubbers, even your well-bred northern rock dove. Your proper racing pigeon's a Belgian, deep throat, elastic muscle, always leading the uprush. Sometimes when I see them cut away from the boxes, I think, that's the whole world dematerializing, the sky a pantomime of silk. You see them winging first the wrong way, then exactly the right, as though a sorcerer's apprentice made the wrong flourish, but magic itself corrected him. How shall I put that in the minutes then, like? Bertie Highshore volunteered an ornithological rapture? No rapture with the bin man rounding the corner and the tea gone 20 minutes cold. Our Alfie said to me, on a scale of paperback to exoskeleton, how thin's your skin? I'm pure carapace, me, but when he told me, you know how it is, time was. When he told me he couldn't do it anymore, he can't do it anymore, mind, no question. No, he can't, no. Have you seen his breeding lofts? Not a right angle left and the whole grid, just lethargy slouching into itself. No, I know it. On a scale of wine to vinegar, I said to him, we know when we've turned, but do you remember him sneaking that sable hen with the perfect eyes into the association house, him finally bootlegging that bloodline? He handed her to me when the fancier from Annex stormed in, and she curled against me with the heft of a trembling eggplant. I felt her charisma, her creature life beating against my stillness. On a scale of shepherd smock to Pete Postlethwaite, call me a dreamy-eyed rustic, but I hope the last thing I think of in this world is the sun-dappled moor at the first race of the season, when the birds break out like the opening of everything and take off homing into wave or particle, whatever it turns out to be. If we could get it, or both, get it into the minutes, that fugue. And this one is called Old Hive. It will be found in a different season from when it fell. After the scaled down insect tiger in the grass moves on, long after the boy runs into the screen door and the father says, "Caught one," to the laughter of others. After the snails approach each other in low belove, and the leaves shake off drops gelid as eyes, and the bee settles into the petal canoe, ruffled undertaking, and the thorn stops the turning of the dung beetle's globe. It will be found after the world gives in to the point of the hummingbird's proboscis, and all the tiny skewed parasols are raised against the sun. Someone's hands will skim over the comb, its emulsified goblets. Someone will show their child and their child's friends. What scraps are left in the dry compartments are clothes donated to charity in bags on the step. And the husk will give itself then to our stiff fingers. It will be as though we've never touched anything from the garden before, nothing so forlorn. Everything follows. The small horned beetle at whose bonnet the child rejoices. Look, even the triceratops is not dead. Okay, this next one is a poem that I wrote when I was pregnant with my second son. It's about the mystery of being pregnant and having this intimate relationship with someone you've never seen and you really don't know who they are. So I think of that as one of the greatest mysteries there is, and I wrote this poem about that. It's called Kick Count, and it's in these blobby little stanzas on the page. 1. Baby, you are all surprise Himalaya, giving way to mossy avalanches. My flesh, the breakwell net, the peril membrane. 2. How can it be that we've never seen each other, blind in symbiosis? It is the strangest anguish. 3. We're Madonna and child without figuration, only texture. No reciprocating eyes, craning for beauty. Just the echo of ourselves in sound and space. I'm the squish of your sourdough batch. You're a tumble and retrieval of 3 or 4 batons. We'd simply never cut it as a painting. 4. Just once, in a black pool of translated sound, it seemed that something moved behind you like the nicked tail of a turning koi. They said it was your hair. Your hair. It's all I saw. The rest of you echolocated behind a solid fist. Baby, 5. Imagine having no face. You're the flamingo croquet mallet Alice handles in the garden. I'm the plane of her experience. I'm her palm. This one is called Hinge, and this is the oldest poem in the book. I wrote this when I was a student. Hinge. And that was our domestic cliffhanger. To see how long that gate of theirs would yawn and dangle on its horse hinge. It was like a buccaneer who'd been told to walk the plank, but had caught the platform with one hand on his way down and was just waiting to climb back on board. It kept us on edge. We watched it every day, coming home over the backfield from the mines to the row houses where that one gate sat on its slant, always swinging one-handed on its branch, creaking monkey laughter, while the air turned sweet and spores grew hungry under our feet. And every day we came home from over the way, every day at the same time, each to his identical little plot piled high with long moldy hay and lost plumage, and wondered if this would be the day the gate fell. It belonged to a family of 4, faces like Easter Island statues. Maybe they thought they could last it out. Think of the relief, though, of letting it fall, letting the blooming stalking pasture spill over between the posts, letting the neighbors make the joke about finally coming unhinged, sinking into the great, glowing, famished field, its undertow. Okay, and I will read one last poem. It's called Thanks for my son's innocent knees and thanks. Thanks for my son's innocent knees and thanks for the suction in the library door that lets me think I'm a muscular reader. And thanks for letting me open my eyes this time and the next. Also going back for the way that one grandmother sang in that Coronation Street post-war brass kind of way, and the way the others sucked the air through pursed lips for focus, for the way my dad whistled through his teeth, and for my mom's hoarse cough when she drew the morning curtain. Thanks for the way the air went in and out of all of them, and for that secret place in the forest where the creek ran under ice, for the park my grandfather wouldn't let me go to, for the rush of the winging bats, the T-bar I fell off, the horse that kicked me, the reprimand from the lifeguard. Thanks for the things of my own making that I tore apart, smaller and smaller, for the night I failed as my brother's tooth fairy, for the day I dressed up to meet my newborn nephew. Are you wearing makeup? My sister asked. For the baby? Thanks for the performance of Ruttigore, where I resolved to hold his hand, and for how it wasn't too late, even after the intermission, and for when he kissed me in the Peel subway over the turnstile, crowd stopping. I had to recall a pop art Peter Parker and Mary Jane just to know like a dance step where my hands should be. There's no time in a turnstile kiss. So thanks. Thanks even for the night when, so much later, my mother-in-law dying, I walked into the night street, marveling at the operation of my own body, the leaves going to the very places where my toes pushed them, and the excoriating light coming from that one lamp, the cars like barges on a sea of gold, in the misty season with its fire pit air, and for the permeable way it all finally happened to sink in. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was such a moving reading, Medrie. Thank you. It was beautiful. So everyone, this concludes our readings for the evening. I'd like to give a big thank you to our Zoom tech and for the VERSeFest Planning Committee, in particular, Avonlea Fotheringham and Monty Reed, for their extraordinary efforts in creating a hybrid live virtual event, as well to Miriam and to all of our wonderful poets tonight. Thank you. We hope everyone here had a great time. And if anybody has any questions that they would like Miriam and I to facilitate, by all means, I can give it a moment. If not, we can also just wrap things up, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event at 9 Eastern time, I should state. So I'll just mute my mic for a second.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, by all means.
Lillian, the poem about Ireland, is that,
Mhm.
that's not in the book, is it? Is it published?
No, it's something new. I actually just finished it today. It's something that that's part of this chapbook that Rob's going to be publishing in Above Ground Press for Above Ground Press in, I think, January or February. So yeah, it's just a part of that. Yeah.
I wanted a fast copy.
I would love the text to have the text of that. So it's coming out in February or so from now?
I think January or February, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I will watch for that. Whatever.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm just, seeing as I'm talking anyway, I would also like to say to Medrie that that was just amazing. And when I first saw the name of your book, I thought it said, of course, the what was it? The little housewife, right? And then my eyes went whoop. I'm like, oh, the little house wolf. Wow. So anyway, those were just, all of you were just wonderful. I'm just so pleased. I feel grateful to have listened to you all. Thank you. I'll shut up now.
That's really nice. Thanks, Catherine. I loved your reading too, and Lillian's and Vanessa's. It was just such a great evening.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. If there are no more questions, maybe we'll see everyone at the next event. Thanks for all your attendance and the lovely words. If the poets haven't read them, read the chat. It's just like such a great, honest, well, it's all true, but it's such a great ego stroker. Okay, so I will conclude tonight, and I hope everybody is safe and staying warm.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel so uplifted. Thank you very much.
Merci, bonne soirée.
Bonne soirée.
Merci.
Merci.
Bonsoir.
Bye-bye.
Faces. Rusty, mwah. Kevin, yay! Sean, oh my God. Kevin, like it's been so long. Khalifa, DMP, like my goodness.